Welcome to the Bush League Huddle Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Roger Mecca, alongside Fabio Fab Cerlelli and Anthony Nacc. It's about 8:15 on a Monday evening, and we are humbled and honored to be with you for our very first episode. First and foremost, guys, how are we doing tonight?
Yeah. This has honestly been a while we've been planning this, so I'm super excited.
About 3 weeks to be.
No, it's been way longer than that. I'm slightly nervous, but also very excited. This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this. Yeah.
My heart rate's high. I'm not going.
Yeah, same. I feel like I'm presenting in front of like a classroom or like for work or something, and it's just like the pre-presentation jitters is what I'm getting. Yeah. This is fun.
What I meant, guys, is how are you guys feeling like with your legs? So just for those listening, all three of us played pickup basketball on Friday, and we're like basically old geezers now. So I had like one leg basically swollen over the other. No, Nacc, Fab, how are you guys feeling?
Honestly, like my knees were killing on Sunday, like big time. I think they were pretty swelled up, and my Achilles were doing pretty bad. But got up this morning 5 to 6 to go for my half an hour morning walk, and did one again this evening before the pod, and I feel great. So I'm back.
That's a nice pregame warm up.
Very nice. Yeah, very nice. I'm a little sore still, but we're good. We're pushing through it. The hamstrings were sore. The hamstrings were very, very sore. So I'm just looking forward to the summer season where I can start running again and just getting back into proper shape, because that was pitiful. That was really bad.
And that's why we are quote unquote fantasy analysts and not football players, because we are old and we get hurt after basically 30 minutes of basketball. But I digress. We have a great, which I think we all agree, great first episode lined up. We're going to kind of talk about new faces in different places in terms of the $2 billion free agency week that just happened. A lot of movement, a lot of players that switch sides, not only on free agency, but from a trade perspective as well. But first we want to kind of just talk about like, who are we? What is Bush League? What is the Bush League podcast? Where did this idea derive from? So the Bush League is actually a league, a fantasy football league that we are all in. It's about a 20-year league. Fab has been in it for 20 years. I've been in it for the past, I think, 7 or 8 years. Nacc, I think you like almost a decade now.
Yeah, I think I started. It was after Arizona Super Bowl, Steelers Arizona Super Bowl, because I remember naming my team. I'll never forget Santonio MVP Holmes. That was my initiation into the league, and that's what I named my team name, my first fantasy football team name.
To this day, I still do not think that was a catch, but that's another thing that I've let like Nacc knows this very well, that I still don't think that was a catch. But
I think we could go hours on just that.
We're going to agree to disagree on that.
It was a catch, and
yeah, exactly. So it's a 20-year league. We've been in it for a long time. We have a group chat, a WhatsApp group chat that is, I would say, 90% about football and about other funny stuff. The great thing about it is that it's a 2 QB league. And when I was first recruited into this league, or when I would first talk to Fab and Nacc about this league, I would kind of laugh at the fact that you guys were in a 2 QB league. I did not respect it. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I'm used to PPR, standard, 1 QB, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver flex, so on and so forth. And then when I finally got in, thank you guys, by the way, for letting me in, I realized how hard it was, right? Like, it's 2 QBs. It's not a super flex. You have to start 2 QBs. And if we see the year that we had in the NFL where there was a ton of backup QBs, it becomes very hard. There's different strategies. Do you hoard QBs? QB value becomes way higher. And it almost mimics the real NFL, where the value of the QBs is super high, similar to the real NFL. So not only are we massive football fans, we're big fantasy football fans as well. So this podcast won't just be about fantasy football. It'll also be about NFL, so on and so forth. But we felt there was a lack of 2 QB content around there. And, we plan on focusing obviously on, yes, 2 QBs. We're also a fab league. which is our first year being in a fab league. So we saw the great ramifications that has. We're a PPR league as well. So we're going to focus on as much as possible. We also used to be a dynasty, or sorry, not a dynasty league, but a keeper league as well. So I think we have a good understanding of those aspects of fantasy football. And then, there's a championship right behind Nacc there with his two Steeler helmets. That actually, he beat me in the final. And, there's a ton of experience within this foray of three people. So,
well, so to go back to the 2 QB league for a second, like you guys might have started off playing fantasy football and you had your 1 QB. I've owned, like, my first introduction to fantasy football was 2 QBs. That's all I've really ever known. I had to introduce and work. When I get into a 1 QB league and I'm playing and I'm drafting a quarterback in the 8th or 9th round, like, I'm laughing. Like, when you get to, and then we're drafting the 1st and 2nd round and we're going quarterback, or quarterback wide receiver, because running backs might not even be that valued anymore. It messes with your perception on how to go about these things. So I think it's fantastic. Not that I'm just on the podcast, but the fact that we're prioritizing 2 QB leagues, because there's so little coverage for this. And even when you look at analysts' articles and even mock drafts on ESPN and everything, it's like I wait all year to get a mock draft for 2 QBs, and there's like 1 out of 15 that are done. So like it's nice that we're finally putting 2 QB leagues on the map a little bit. This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And this is great. This is really, really good. Nacc, no one cares about your fantasy football trophy. No one cares.
Yeah, I know. I wish you had your name on it. But no, honestly, me too. I was thrust into the wolves with 2 QB league. Like, that's how I started as well. So, and it was honestly, you're looking at mock drafts, and I looked at mock drafts that were for 1 QB league. So I struggled mightily, to use the term lightly, at the beginning of fantasy football. Not only was I naive and drafted only players that I liked and Steelers players, the 2 QB league, it wasn't drafting QBs high enough. So it was a very rough go, but yes, as you can see, the trophy beside me has my name on it twice now, so I think I've grasped the concept.
Nacc was notoriously bad. I think his nickname was 8.5 because someone did a calculation. Someone did a calculation of his average finish of like his first 6-7 years.
That was me. That was me. There was a day after you were talking so much trash, I just lost it. I'm like, hold on a second, motherfucker. I'm just like, you've been fishing 9, 7. That was fun.
In my defense, the numbers you were taking weren't just because Yahoo takes the finish at the end of the year, not regular season, right? So that stat was a lot worse than it needed to be. But I'm going to admit, I have
you've done.
He was taking the mean and not the average.
You've done quite the 180. I'll give you credit where credit's due. You've won twice now in the last 4 years. So it's not something to shy away from. I still don't have my name on the trophy, even though I've won twice. But nobody cares about winning what's on the trophy, I'll admit.
No.
I think if we had a trophy of second place, I think it would all be Raj.
Yeah, I've had had 2 back-to-back second places in this league, and then I missed the playoffs for 1 or 2 years, and then I was also second place. But yeah, you don't get trophies for second place, and you don't claim winnings for not being on the. That's like Alabama claiming national championships when there was only white players. That's the equivalent.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of the history of the Bush League. We settled on that name finally. We had a various other names, but we felt, look, let's pay homage to this great league we're in. So let's start off with fantasy, not fantasy impact of the free agents over the past week, free agents and trades. So we'll start with the quarterbacks. They're the bells of the balls usually, and there was one bell of the ball this year. So we're going to basically go through quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. We're going to save tight ends for maybe another episode. We'll do a deeper dive into tight ends at a later episode. There wasn't too many free agency moves on that end, but the tight end position is really good. So we're really focused on QBs, running backs, and wide receivers. So Fab, you want to start us off? Who is your QB who you felt either had a great impact or a negative impact that changed teams during the during the free agency period?
Thanks. Yeah. So Kirk Cousins was the guy that I chose. I think first flowers have to be given to his agent because the guy's only won one playoff game. He's going to be the most winning. He's going to be the highest paid player of all time once his contract is done. Is that it? He's going to have earned more money than any other player in the history of the NFL. Is that correct?
Is that true?
I think he beats Brady once the contract is over.
Yeah. I don't think you could compare it to Brady. He never took money, right? He had the money in the bank.
Right. I think
just guarantees he's at 330 with this contract, which is absurd.
Ridiculous for one playoff.
If I were a professional outfit, you need to know for a fact.
Going forward, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay.
You need to know for a fact.
Well, he is moving to a new team, Atlanta Falcons. Yeah. Which I think is fantastic. Honestly, I was looking at the numbers right now, and Kirk, wherever Kirk Cousins has played, he's always really showered targets to his wide receiver one, to his tight ends. McLaurin became a household name because of what he did with him in Washington. Obviously, JJ goes without saying, Justin Jefferson, but
even Pierre Garçon before that. I think he played with Pierre.
A deep cut was Jordan Reed in Washington. Remember, he turned him into a fantastic player. So this was it's a plus for sure. Maybe more towards a push in the sense that, and I want to dive into the weeds a little bit more. But I think the overall fantasy impact definitely hits more about his supporting cast than specifically for Kirk Cousins. He's going to a new regime, new offense, right? New coach, Raheem Morris, new offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson from the Sean McVay coaching tree, which I think is going to be helpful towards him. Big impact. He's going to a better offensive line. Like you're looking at a 12th ranked with Minnesota to 4th ranked. And when you're coming off an Achilles tear, and an Achilles tear specifically off your throwing leg, your plant leg, it's going to play a big factor in being able to have solid protection. So I think it's going to help a lot. He's already started to throw again as of today. I think he started throwing last week or something like that. So that's already a good sign. So it's a good start. By June, they're projecting him to be back to normal, or practicing at least. So it's going to be very good. Very good in ways of recovery. But again, it's going off his throwing leg, his plant leg. I think it's important to note. He is staying in a dome, which is great. And he's arguably going to a worse division, right? Tampa Bay won this division with 9 wins. And the year before that, it was 8 wins. So you're looking at a place where he can definitely do well and succeed just by virtue of the division he's in. He doesn't have to play against Detroit that's surging now. You got Green Bay that's playing amazing, so this is going to be interesting. Like I said, weapons are a bit of a push. Collectively, maybe better in Atlanta, just because of his supporting cast in general. Like they added Rondell Moore, they added Darnell Mooney. Didn't really have those guys that took off the top of the defense. So I find in Minnesota, the KJ Osborne was great, but big thing is obviously going to be Bijan. You saw what he did with his running backs in Minnesota. Just absolutely killed it. I think it's going to be a huge push for Bijan there too. Going into the details a little bit right now. So Drake and JJ average depth of target looking at 10.4 yards versus 12. Not a huge difference, but the split could be split in the favor for JJ. Could be from the quarterback play. Drake's a bigger guy, bigger receiver at 6'4", which I think is going to help him immensely. It's also going to help Kirk Cousins too because he has a big target to go through.
He had that big game. Sorry to cut you off. I don't remember. Was it against Tampa where he went off? I think Nacc, you had picked him up. I think when he had that big game, 7 or 8 catches, 150. I'm talking about Drake London. Yep. And then afterwards, he just dove after again because Ritter was just so bad.
I think it was against Tampa Bay. They just peppered him with targets. They just decided that game that today is going to be the Drake London day, and he just went completely bonkers.
I think to your point, Fab, I think the fact that he's a big target, he's going to be like a jump ball guy. He's going to get fade routes. He's going to get some targets in the end zone. Yeah, he's going to get some deep balls. So
it's going to definitely help him a lot. It's going to be. Sorry,
where do you think you would draft, in terms of I don't want to do a full top 10 list, but like his Cousins in like the eighth, ninth best QB in terms of
Yeah.
rankings?
So I think
let's say for fantasy.
Yeah, for fantasy purposes, for real life quarterback, I think he's great. Fantasy purposes, you're limited because you're not going to get any rushing upside. You're not going to get rushing touchdowns. You're not going to get rushing yards. So you look at him the same way you would look at maybe Justin Herbert or even Stafford, in the sense that it's a lower end QB1. You might get a rushing touchdown here and there, just like a sneak, but don't expect like 5 or 6 touchdowns, more like in the 1 or 2 range. He's never really rushed for more than like 125 yards in his career. So again, like you got to temper expectations, but he's super efficient. And
2 years ago, he was like top 5 fantasy points. And last year, he was well on his way. He's well on his way to get there last year.
Yep. He was going to finish QB6. I ran the numbers and I was looking at what he did right now. He started off really, really well in the first half of the season, and he was on his way to finishing like QB6. But you have like the top 5 guys, they all rush. They all rush and they all get in close and they all rush in for touchdowns, and that makes such a big difference. And
our buddy Lucas won. Sorry, go ahead.
Is Mahomes really rushing that much? Like if you go back to stats this year, like he's not. There's no way he clips like 300 yards.
So this year was a down year, but the previous year I think he rushed for like 400 or 500 yards. Like this year in general, Mahomes was down across all of his stats, and I'm going to jump into that too when I talk about the wide receiver. The year before that, though, he did have to move a lot more. So it's something you have to take into consideration too. I mean, you have listen. I'm not saying shy away from him. It's very, very reasonable to finish in the top 10. He's going to be knocking on the door for top 5. But if you want a guy who's going to finish 1, 2, or 3, I don't think it's going to be him, and I think that's just the reality of it.
That's why I don't think that low end QB1 is good, just because top 10 you're smack QB1, right? Like you're 10 people, right? Like and like we said, last year he was on pace for 6. So I think really high end, solid QB1 in like my eyes. And like you said, the weapons are there. He's going to have a supporting cast. He's going to have a top 5 offensive line. Look, he's getting the tight end who should be good. Like again, like are we giving Kyle Pitts the benefit of the doubt that it was system and like when throwing? Like
I am.
I'm not going to try.
I'm not touching him with a 10-foot pole.
Listen,
I've gotten burned too many times.
I'm not diving on the Kyle Pitts bandwagon there. Like I'm not jumping on that, but I'm not shying away from it either. I think again, you go back to what Kirk Cousins has done with his tight ends. He made no names into house name brands. And Jordan Reed, obviously TJ was another guy too.
TJ wasn't a no-name though. TJ
was a bomb. I didn't mean that towards him, that comment. I meant towards what he had in Washington.
Yeah.
Hawkins is amazing, and he was fantastic. Yeah. And I think I think Kyle Pitts will have his best season to date. That's not saying a lot because his best season would just be 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's very reasonable, and I think it's more likely than not.
Any other points on Cousins, or else we'll move on to Nacc's QB pick?
Just quickly, I think this raises his floor, but ultimately I don't think it raises his ceiling to top end degree. That's why it was a bit of a push for me too, because where Cousins has been finishing the last few years has been around QB8, QB9, QB11.
Yeah.
Like I'm not forecasting him to finish in the top 5, but he can definitely knock on that door for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say our buddy Lucas in our Bush League, I think he won the league with him in 2022. I think he drafted him 2 years in a row, and he was looking really solid with him last year, and then he got the Achilles injury.
This year, he went first pick in the 4th round. In a 2 QB league, if he's your second quarterback,
it's fantastic.
Like you're flying. You're flying.
Yeah.
So
he was the first. He was still.
I think it was his first, but I'm saying if you want to go QB heavy, like some of us might do.
I mean, Cousins as your QB1 is not a bad option either. No. You're talking about QB1 and you got him in the 4th round. Like that's like steal
100%.
2 QB league.
Yeah, totally. And we'll eventually. I think we'd like to get into draft strategies in a 2 QB league. And, typically, depending on what your draft strategy is, I'm of the belief that you take QBs maybe a little bit later, but we'll get into that at a later time. But Cousins is a good bet if you want to say, hey, I don't want to necessarily take a QB in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Nacc, I have a feeling I know where you're going with your QB.
Yeah,
I think it's Sam. Is it Sam Howell? Is it Drew Lock?
It's Drew Lock, I think, right?
It's Drew Lock. Yeah.
Probably guess. I'm gonna go with a new addition to the Steelers room, Mr. Russell Wilson.
It's unlimited.
So, Mr. Unlimited.
It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous.
You got to be limited. Look. Just like Cousins, they are the same age, right? 36 years old. So they're not, their best days, I would have to say, are behind them. But look, if you're looking at positives, he inherited or he's inheriting a similar situation that he had in Seattle when he thrived, right? Solid run game, top 5 D. And you know what? Like he's not necessarily coming to Pittsburgh to be the guy. There's pieces around him to help him out. I think coaching situation is going to be a lot better and he's going to benefit from that. I think Sean Payton is just too much ego and too much, and like they just clashed, right? It didn't work. And I don't think the system in Denver really suited his style of play, especially with Nathaniel Hackett as his head coach. Like that was just a train wreck. I still don't know how Rodgers vouches for him to this day. He's completely yeah. Look, he was in his wedding, right? So, but look, again, and then you look to his, everyone was saying he's washed and he's no good. And you look at his 2023 stats and you know what? They're pretty serviceable. You're at, 3,100 passing yards. You have 28 passing TDs, which was ranked 9th in the league. And he played 2 less games than everyone, right? Only had 8 INTs. So he's still protecting the ball. He's not, compared to a Josh Allen who had like 18 or something, so he still had 340 rushing yards at age 35 with another 3 TDs. So look, 31 total TDs at age 35 in an offense that didn't suit him, and everyone's telling me he's bad. Well, if you compare that to what the Steelers have had the last 2 seasons, they've had about 25 passing touchdowns total in 2 seasons combined. So it's been very poor. He had 66% completion percentage, so that's not horrible. Look, 6.9 yards per completion, which was low. But look, Sean Payton loves his running backs and his screens and his short passes. So that definitely didn't help his air yards. They didn't want him throwing. 45 sacks. So that's like 3 a game. So look, that's the product of his scrambling style. So look, you're going to have to live with those results. It's one of those things where you wish it didn't happen or as much, but look, it is what it is.
Nacc, how do you think if it benefits Pickens? Because I'm of the belief, like you said, like big running game, Pickens, fast guy, like good contested catch rate.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up. Like he was 9th in deep ball attempts last year, which is going to be amazing for Pickett because the Steelers were towards the bottom of that. So, they didn't trust Kenny Pickett to throw the ball, and I think they're going to trust a Russell Wilson to throw the ball. He still has one of the best deep balls in the league, in my opinion. Yes. Look, and this, to go back to like a lot of sacks, he was 3rd in completion percentage on pressured throws at 63.6%, and he was 6th in red zone completions at 62.3. Where have the Steelers been lacking for touchdowns and settling for field goals? In the red zone. They have been very poor in the red zone, and I think that's going to elevate it as well. He was middle of the pack when throwing into man coverage, so he's not great and not bad. Look, I think everyone knows he's not the same Russell Wilson, but I think he's coming into a much better situation. Like the Steelers won 10 games last year with Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and Rudolph, and a banged up D, which saw Fitzpatrick and Cam miss a bunch of games. TJ Watt didn't play in the playoff game. So like I hear some people talking and it's like, wow, he's too old and he's washed and he's this. And it's like, guys, the situation in the room got 10 times better. And if they won 10 games doing that and they're not, I just don't see how the low risk, high reward aspect comes into this. And in a 2 QB league for fantasy purposes, this as your as QB2
exactly.
is you're flying.
So that's
to
the
get
thing. That's the thing. I think in a standard, he's a spot starter, like backup in certain cases, depending if it's a 10 team or 12 teamer.
Yeah.
I think you can say that Wilson was not in the right offense.
No.
Peyton didn't trust him. You could also say that he played safe. I think he played safe. And a lot of analysts, I was listening to, I don't know if it was Ryan Clark or I was listening to someone on Get Up last week. Someone was also saying he played way too safe, padding his stats or afraid of being benched by throwing a lot of screens, not forcing the ball. But when he did force the ball to Sutton, he looked really good. Like
guys,
he's still a good goal ball quarterback.
Accurate. He was still an accurate quarterback who's protecting the ball, right? Like he's not giving the ball away. So it's one of those things that, and now not only are you playing for potentially your one more pro contract, that's already enough to push you. I know reportedly the Steelers told him he wanted a 2-year deal, and they shut that down. They said, we'll kind of look at it at the end of the year.
I don't get it.
But now with the addition of Justin Fields in the room, now that adds a little bit more pressure to kind of like, if it was Kenny Pickett backing him up, I'm sure he wasn't going to be scared of, Pickett's going to come for my job. But you know what? With Fields, that's a different dynamic. Now you have a 26-year-old guy. He was just traded for a 6th-round pick. Like, how does that make him feel that kind of no one wanted him, or people view him as a backup? So he's got a chip on his shoulder now. So I think come camp, it's going to be a battle. Ultimately, I think Russell Wilson starts week 1. Like, I think he's got to really mess it up royally to lose the starting job in Pittsburgh. But I mean, look, there's a lot of factors here that could motivate him and that could be really good for this team. And I think the whole fan base, and Tomlin included, and the owner and everything knows this is the year that they have to win a playoff game. Because if they don't win a playoff game this year, it's time to clean house and do something different, because something's not working. But I think making these moves is completely not the Steeler way of doing things, and they're already showing that they're willing to change things. So I think I have a feeling this is, and look, I think it's going to go really well. And if it doesn't, you're paying him $1.21 million. You move on from him next year, and you have Fields who's sitting behind him waiting for his opportunity to take another team.
Fab, I'll let you go. I just want to. So I was listening to the Rich Eisen podcast on the way home. They had Jerry Dulac, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reporter, Nacc, I'm sure you're familiar with. He said that it was supposed to be 20-minute call, Russ and is it Art? Was it Ed Rooney? I forget who's the main Rooney in charge of it. Art. And it ended up being like a 90-minute call. Like, they were absolutely floored. They loved Russ so much. And I guess that's what ended up being the deciding factor in him signing. So I think the vibes are really good. And just one last thing, we tweeted it in our Twitter account at Bush League Huddle without the E. Arthur Smith in 2020, 35% play action was the highest in the AFC in 2020 when he was offensive coordinator of the Titans. I think we think that that'll have a big impact. He likes QBs who could run. We saw how he revived Ryan Tannehill. Play action, deep shots. I think it'll be a big focus. Sorry, go ahead, Fab.
The only downfall. Oh, sorry, Fab. I think the only downfall really I see is that Arthur Smith's offense is tailored to middle of the field, and neither Fields or Wilson are really guys that like to throw over the middle of the field. So that's going to be an interesting thing to kind of watch throughout training camp and preseason, and see what Arthur Smith and how they kind of a new system.
Well, Arthur Smith, thanks to him, I drafted Ryan Tannehill as my QB1 a few years ago after he had that great year in Tennessee, and that worked out fantastic. So this is going to be very good for Russell Wilson. No, I love this move. I think Pittsburgh really did a slam dunk with this and with Fields. And I think Russell will be very serviceable. I think you're going to go back to seeing him more, in my opinion, like maybe his last season in Seattle, how he was doing, like probably flirting around like 3,500 yards passing, like mid 20 touchdowns. I think he's going to be very efficient, and as a QB2, fantastic at all. I'm just curious, like weapons wise, I know they have two great running backs that can catch on the backfield. You have George Pickens, you have Pat Freiermuth. There's still that wide receiver too. Like I know Pittsburgh are going to draft some guy in the 7th round no one's ever heard of him. He's going to turn into like the next Antonio Brown. But like realistically, Mike Williams has been on the radar. Is there anyone else that like could be looked at potentially for some targets in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, look, first of all, wide receiver, I think us knowing the wide receiver factory that they produce, that's, I think, the where I'm the least worried. Look, they signed Van Jefferson to a 1 year. Is he going to move the needle? No. I think good possession kind of receiver. I think it's good. I think it's a great fit for the offense, kind of like a safety blanket type thing. I know there was rumblings with Tyler Boyd, but then some reports came out saying that some in the organization feel that they're not too keen on Boyd. As you said, Mike Williams. People are suggesting that he's going to the Panthers and the Jets, and then the Steelers. People are suggesting he might sign with the Steelers. Again, that would be crazy with Mike Williams and Pickens on the outside. They also have Calvin Austin, who they lost him for the whole first year due to injury, and then last year was kind of put into that wide receiver 4 role with Allen Robinson. Had some flashes this year, scored a few TDs, but look, maybe waiting in the wings, see what he can do. And look, they're definitely going to draft a wide receiver. I'm pretty sure if Jackson Powers is not there, that center at 20, I think they're going to go. I don't know if they're going to go offensive line. I think because of the wide receiver need, maybe they draft a wide receiver at 20.
You think like a Brian Thomas maybe? Or
like a Brian Thomas. It would be the first receiver they draft in the first round since there's truly Santonio Holmes.
And like, was it a surprise that Deontay Johnson was traded? Like, did it come out of the left field a little bit that they weren't even shopping him before this year?
Nah, he fell out of favor, especially last year. I forgot what team they were playing, but the
Bengals.
The Bengals. He fumbled the ball and kind of just like left it, or the ball was fumbled.
Yes.
He turned around. He still didn't see it. Yeah, and there was no effort. I got into a fight with Fitzpatrick, one of the captains in the room. It didn't go off great, and he did request a trade. A lot of stuff is quiet coming out of Pittsburgh. There's not a lot of leaks, but he did request a trade, and they granted him the trade because, look, as Tomlin says, we need volunteers, not hostages.
Tomlin and his quotes, man, he just like.
But it works, man. It works.
Do they?
Listen, I mean,
they just sound like sign bites. I like Tomlin. They sound like sign bites.
You can't knock the body of work that his results, considering the roster he's had and the quarterbacks he's had in the last few years, right? I mean, that you can't knock it. You can't. He's doing a lot more with less.
Yeah, I think. So let's move on to my choice. So it's a bit different in terms of what I did here. I looked at all the bridge backup QBs that were signed. So there was Sam Howell, who went from the I was about to say the R word, from the Commanders to the Seahawks. We have Jacoby Brissett. We have Gardner Minshew. We have Drew Lock. We have Sam Darnold as well. So this is an interesting test case in terms of backups and bridge QBs. Ultimately, I went with Jacoby Brissett as the guy who I think could have a positive impact, only because I think out of all these guys, he has a firmer lock on the starting position. Depends what the Patriots do with the third overall pick. There are rumors that they may trade the pick. There are rumors that they may draft a wide receiver. Ultimately, I don't think that roster is good enough for them to thrust in a quarterback and that quarterback to be successful from day one. The director of scouting, Elliot Wolf, some might not know who he is, but he's Ron Wolf's son. Ron Wolf was the general manager of the Green Bay Packers, and they're used to either trading down or obviously we know what they did with Aaron Rodgers and then with Jordan Love as well, where they had the quarterback under the wings waiting for a season or two. I'm a big Brissett guy because he's well liked. From all reports, he's really well liked in the locker room. Known to be like a great guy. 11 games in 2020, the year Watson was suspended, 2,600 yards, 12 TDs, 6 INTs, 64% completion. He runs the ball. He'll run about 40 to 50 times, 200 to 400 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns. Even the first year post-Luck retirement, 15 games, 3,000 yards, 18 touches, 6 touchdowns. He's not going to be, obviously you're not going to draft him, I would say in the first 8 rounds. But if you're someone like me who likes to wait on quarterbacks, who'd rather get that value in the running back and wide receiver position first, he's someone that who could be serviceable as your QB2 or backup QB in a 2 QB system. He's still only 31 years old. And I also like the fact that he's going to have the same OC, Alex Van Pelt, who is the OC in New England, who was also the OC with Cleveland. So a lot of continuity. He was drafted by the Patriots too back in, I think, 2016. I think they opted for Jimmy G as the backup instead. If I look at Sam Howell, I don't think he's going to be, at least starting in camp, Geno is the clear starter. Minshew and AOC are basically like the same player. Like I think it'll be a camp out. I don't think there's any guarantee that Minshew is a starter. And the interesting one is Drew Lock. If we think about Daniel Jones's injury guarantee, if he gets injured next year, that 2025 salary, $23 million, is fully guaranteed. So it's really going to be interesting to see what happens with Daniel Jones. The Giants are still in play for a quarterback. There literally could be a 3 QB competition in training camp. So I would heavily avoid that. Darnold, last but not least, Darnold is the one that could be interesting because there's a lot of talent there. There's Addison, there's Justin Jefferson. We just haven't really seen anything from Darnold. We've heard rumblings that he's looked really good in practice. We all listen to McAfee, and McAfee keeps mentioning the fact that some source said that he's the best thrower of the football in San Francisco they've ever seen, better than Purdy, better than Young, better than Montana, better than Jeff Garcia, but I'm not buying it. So I'm going to go with Brissett. It's not the sexiest option. I let you guys have the more sexy options in terms of QB, but I'm going to go with Brissett as a solid option.
Look, Raj, I agree, I think, with everything, pretty much everything you said. And I hope for, let's say, team like New England that look, they're likely going to draft the QB. I hope to God they don't like rush him into action. They do not have the roster to do that. They have to play Brissett no matter what and sit that QB minimum 1 year, no matter what it is. Let him learn. Look, Mahomes sat. Herbert was supposed to
exactly. Yeah,
he was supposed to sit before the trainers, punctured Tyrod's lung. Good. Love sat for 3 years, and now look how good he looks. I think even Darnold has to start no matter what. I know there's rumblings. They traded and got an extra first round pick, so now the rumblings are they want to trade up and grab a QB. I think any QB, they're the best team because the offensive minded coach can coach QBs, and he's going to make any QB really, really good in that system. But I still think that Darnold, no matter what, 1 year, $10 million, he has to start. Like, it's just one of those things. He has to start. And I just don't feel like these teams should rush. I don't know why everyone's always rushing with these QBs. Like, take a year at least, let them learn how to be a pro. Let them learn from, and look, Jacoby Brissett, amazing pro. He's a veteran. Like, why not let him learn? Darnold has been through the ropes. How many teams has he played for? He's been shoved back into, like, these guys know what it takes on a daily basis to, hey, you have to push to be better. You can't just be entitled like a certain Kenny Pickett thought, you're entitled to, oh, they took my job. Oh, wah. No, you got to compete every single day for a job. Right. So, I don't know. I'm of the mind that you don't rush these.
I agree 100%. But unfortunately, they do like to repeat those mistakes, and because they want the shiny new toys to be playing right away. I hope for the Minnesota aspect, the Minnesota scenario, I think it's great for a rookie QB to come in because, like you said, Nacc, Darnold's getting paid $10 million a year. That's not nothing. They're not going to pay him that kind of money just to sit on the bench and have a rookie start. At least you hope not, anyways. And plus, as far as like the ecosystem or being surrounded by good weapons, we mentioned this before. Minnesota, plethora of quality talent around Darnold, so he'll be he'll be able to produce to some level, and maybe after being moved around from the Jets to Carolina to San Fran, he might do. Who knows? He might actually have a halfway decent season.
Yeah, we just don't know. Like
No,
it's
the
risky, but you're
unknown.
right.
It's
You're
the
right.
unknown,
Yeah,
and that's the
yeah,
exciting part, right? Because when you're drafting, like again, going back to the whole 2 QB system, you're drafting Brissett as your number 3. If you're drafting him as your number 2, like you're shit out of luck for the whole season. But anyways, like you're drafting him as your number 3. So if you're going,
had Derek Carr as my number 2 for half the year.
yeah, he's like Joey 20 points, man. Like he's gonna give you. And Derek Carr would never. I got happy when Derek Carr was injured because then Jameis Winston came in and just peppered Chris Olave with all kinds of targets.
He just launches. Yeah.
And anyways, that's
30 for 30, baby.
Oh, I love him.
Nice. Do you know who was another QB? You're talking about Darnold. Do you know who's another QB drafted in that class and is on his 3rd team as well, or his 4th team? That's Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield needed time.
He found his team. He found a good spot. He found someone to and it worked. Yeah. What team is Darnold on right now?
It's his 4th team,
Number 4.
And it could work for him. You don't know. Like
times it's just it humbles 100%. You, and it's just look. It took Baker that long, and look, they went 1-3 in the draft, right? If memory strikes me right.
Yeah, I think it was 1-3. I don't think it was 1-2.
Trey Lance went second, I think. No? Was it Trey Lance draft?
Trey Lance was 2021.
Yeah.
Oh, right. You're right.
But your point's well taken, though, Nacc. I mean, let's say they draft up and they draft JJ McCarthy because the top 3 are gone, right? Minnesota, I'm referring to now. Like they jump cut everybody. You can have JJ McCarthy, who everyone's talking about how like he's the most pro ready guy. Fine. You could have him sit behind Darnold for like even 10 games of the season. You know how much, the wealth of information is going to be able to get from that? It's going to be so helpful too. But I agree. The whole season he would have to sit, in my opinion, obviously. But
you have to stick with a plan. And 100%. Like if Darnold's a starter, unless he's hurt or unless there's some unforeseen circumstance, Darnold is insured. Yes, you do not. Yeah, exactly. Like there's no need to take JJ McCarthy and put him in there. I feel like there's no sense. Like you said, to your point, Fab, I understand these guys like their new shiny toy and they want to. They use
sometimes the high it's raise ticket price, like increase ticket sale.
Yes, and I understand. I get all that, but you know what? Like at a certain point, like you want your franchise to be successful, or do you want to start changing quarterbacks every few years? So I don't see the sense in it. There obviously going to be some rookie QBs that are going to start that probably shouldn't, and it's been happening for years, and it's going to continue.
And we're going to see it this year again, and it's going to happen. And it's going to suck because it's going to put a damper on a lot of these guys too, because they come in at 21 years old. They're not necessarily pro ready, but they're thrust into this, and they're going to get the shit kicked out of them, and it's going to kill their confidence to a degree. And it's going to happen again the next year, and the next year, and then and then you have a Sam.
Especially the guys that come from college who don't have a lot of snaps. Like I think McCarthy played. Anyways, we don't have to go into a deep dive, but he started 3 years. Daniels, even though he's a 5-year player, he only really started I think the last 2 years. May, I believe, doesn't have as many starts, even as much as Caleb. So I think it varies, and I think typically what teams want to do, I feel, is they want to have that rookie play right away because it increases ticket revenue. But I mean, the Vikings, they sell it every game. They're still doing the skull. There's fans there all the time. I don't think they have to worry about that. And if Darnold does hit, I think there could still be a sneaky good playoff team if they play their cards at least. Yeah, exactly. The division got a lot harder, and so we'll have to see. So we spent a lot of time on the QBs naturally, most important position. So let's do an RPO to the running backs. So Nacc, there's a lot of running backs, a lot of really good free agent running backs that were available this year. I know there's some thought that maybe the draft for running backs this year isn't as talented, but there was a lot of big names. So who for you will have a positive or negative impact that changed teams during this free agency period or trade period within the running back position?
Yeah, so I went with the guy who got the most money. Usually those guys are not the ones that work out so much. But I think in this case, it's going to be an incredible fit. It's Josh Jacobs. Look, he goes from Josh McDaniels, who was just really coaching was just not for him. He had Antonio Pierce for a little bit, which was, defensive mind, to Matt LaFleur. So already he's going to more of an offensive minded. So it's going to be more tailored to him. We saw Aaron Jones ball out for how many years in Green Bay, So I think the fit is just incredible because he can run and he can catch. And look, he led the league in rushing just 2 years ago. Like some people forget because he had a bad year and he was injured and whatever. Like he led the league in rushing a couple years ago. Like I said, injuries held him to 13 games last year, and his stats obviously suffered. But when he did, he did miss exactly because of the holdout, right? But when he did play, he was 5th in expected fantasy points, and all while being first in average players in the box at 7.2. So he had the most stacked boxes in the NFL and still produced decent stats. I would say, look, he had 800 rush yards with 6 touchdowns. His 3.5 yards per carry was way down at 63rd in the league. He had his catches also went down. He had 37 catches for 300 yards and no receiving touchdowns. But if you compare it to his 2022 stats when he was healthy, 1,650 rushing yards, 12 TDs, and 4.9 yards per carry. He also had 54 catches for another 400 yards. I think his catch numbers could reach that 60 to 70 balls easily in Green Bay because I think they just love ball at their running back. So and now thinking fantasy wise, like I think he's going to be easily top 3 fantasy running back next year. Just with production.
So you're thinking round 1, 2, like round 1 potentially?
Oh yeah. Potentially round 1 if you're going to go running back heavy. Round 2 for Josh. Oh yeah, I'm really really high on Jacobs this year. He also protects the ball. He rarely fumbles. He lost only 2 fumbles last year. So he holds on to the ball.
So I had him in 2 leagues last year, and it was tough. There was times where I felt like I probably could have started James Conner or even Tashi Spears instead of him. But he deserves the benefit of the doubt. He's a really talented guy. He's a guy. He's a guy. You gotta love when they say he's the type of runner. He's the type of guy. He's the type of football player. But he's the type of guy I would say can cut back. He could be a speed guy, but he can also be a power guy as well. So and we were talking today about goal line backs. Like I know AJ Dillon re-signed, but I can't see him being a big factor. I would have to assume Josh Jacobs going to have the vast majority of the carries, no?
I think Josh Jacobs going to have the vast majority of that backfield. I think he has a chance to lead the league in rushing again. Look, they have young receivers too, right? Like Jordan Love is still young. It's going to be they're going to run the ball. They're going to throw Jacobs the ball. He becomes like a vet there, right? Like he's going to get the ball early and often, and I think he'll ride his coattails, and that's why I just think like he's going to be a points machine, PPR animal. I think he's just going to eclipse. Okay, 1,650 rushing yards. That's going to be tough to maybe eclipse, but that 12 TDs like that can easily happen, if not more. 4.9 yards per carry. I think I could see that, and dude, from 54 catches 2 years ago, I think he could easily see 15 to 20 more with Green Bay, just with the way they play. So I don't know. Look, he got paid. I think he deserves it. And I just think really, really incredible fit for Green Bay. And like the rich get richer. They got rid of, they lost Aaron Jones, which sadly went to, I guess, a division rival. So he's going to have a chip on his shoulder to do good against them. But I think replacing him with Josh Jacobs, especially for a team that is kind of like the Steelers and don't make noise in free agency, especially not in the first round of free agency. And they went and they took a huge thing this year. Like they like to draft and develop their own and then pay their own guys. They do not go into the free agency pool at ball, and they went crazy
They're
this
usually
year.
like day 2, day 3, day 4.
Yeah, they'll pay the second or third round guys, like the third round of free agency, and those, and to fill the gaps. But they like to draft. They're a team that likes to draft, like the Steelers. They like to draft, develop their own, and pay their own guys. So it's very uncharacteristic. But I think the year that they finally did it, I think they hit a home run. And I just think, like I said, I think he's a top 3 fantasy back next year.
Yeah, and you hit on a lot of good points. I think the one thing was that the entire roster is young, so they can afford to pay Josh Jacobs a little bit more because everybody else is on the rookie contracts, and he's like one of the oldest guys, and he's still like 26. He's not even 27 yet.
I know.
That roster is so young, and look how good they did in the playoffs. And they dude, it is a fun time to be a Packers fan. And when you have a balanced offense like this now, where you don't know what Love is going to do, and now you have Josh Jacobs in the backfield, and you have all the other wide receiving weapons out there too, and even the tight end is nice. Like, you're talking about a really, really fun time to be a Packers fan.
2 tight ends.
Two tight ends. Yeah, they got 2 nice tight ends. Yeah, it's
love Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Wicks, like that. I am putting money on Jordan Love MVP. Like,
oh yeah.
I didn't look at the odds yet, but I'm definitely
I
putting
feel bad for Detroit because you thought they finally had that division figured out, and it's like Green Bay comes around out of nowhere, like, hey, they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Green Bay though. That's their standard. That's their standard, right? Yeah. Well, they definitely have the right roster around him, and again, adding Josh Jacobs, they were able to pay him. Where the money goes, you're going to see a lot of targets, you're going to see a lot of receptions, you're going to see a lot of volume. I think that's a very good point, Nacc, too. Like, you can expect a lot of volume out of Josh Jacobs for sure, and they didn't pay him to do nothing. So I think you're going to get a lot of volume out of him. And repeating the 2022 stats, not out of the realm of possibility. No.
Totally. Fab, who you got?
Unfortunately, I got Barkley. I mean, unfortunately, listen, I love the guy. I wish him the best, except for when he plays us twice a year. But apart from that, like, you can't knock a guy for going out to get what he thought he was worth in his bag and all that. Then he got it from Philly, and that just goes back to what we're talking about Green Bay, about roster construction, how you can pay the premium for those maybe not as premium positions like they used to be. We talk about how running backs aren't as valued as they once were, but Barkley will still be able to get the money that he wanted. He's playing for Philly. He's in a fantastic situation. I was like trying to argue stock down with Barkley, and I'm like, no, there's not a single argument that I can find over here. So the only knock that I can say, well, there's 2. There's like a knock and a half. Jason Kelce is gone. He was Eagles' best run blocking lineman per PFF, but they have like Cam Jurgens that's coming in, who's been like Kelce's steward for the last like 2 years or whatever it is. Like, he's been playing very well, and he's fitting into that role perfectly fine. They're a top ranked offensive line overall, 3rd best run blocking. Giants were 30th best run blocking last year. So it was a disaster.
It's been a disaster. The Giants, it's been a disaster.
Yeah, it's a complete 180 for him right now. So the Eagles' zone blocking is a lot better than their gap blocking. And Barkley ran more gap than zone with the Giants. Maybe that's why he wasn't as efficient as he could have been. So
maybe just hone in on that, Fab. You're saying the Eagles are more of a zone blocking team, right?
Yeah, and they do a lot better than gap. So basically, they're allowed to double team on the defensive lineman and allow for the running back to choose their best. To choose their best running outlet.
Exactly.
Which Barkley is IQ wise when it comes to football is definitely up there. So I think it's going to be, and he goes for the home run hits, right? And you saw him try to get through those lines when he was with the Giants, and he couldn't get through them. He's going to have those holes now. It's going to be like Moses parting the Red Seas.
So I love that. I love that because like Barkley's skill set fits perfectly for like one cut uphill,
100%.
one step uphill.
He has lost burst though. That's one thing that we have. The injuries are what they are. It's still Barkley. He's still a machine. He has lost. Like you look at the burst that he had in his rookie season to what he had now, and even last year too. In 2022, like an amazing season after all of his injuries, and he killed it. But
he's not a success rate guy. He's not a guy with. He's gonna get bottled. But you get Barkley because it's home runs. It's 20 chunk yards,
and he will get volume, I think, as well. Like he's used to getting pushes like 260, 270 carries. Like Swift had 230 last year. I think he's going to do more than 230. I think he's going to do more around like 240, 250, which is going to help him a lot. But regardless of that, like it's just a better situation all around. Like Philly getting close so much. And even so, just to go back to the offensive line for a second, yards before contact, Barkley was dealing with 1.9 yards before contact. Swift had 2.8. That's almost a full yard more. Jalen Hurts 3.1. Like we're talking about like these are big numbers here. But despite that gap in yards per contact, rushing yards after contact per rush, Barkley at 2, Swift was at 1.8. So already Barkley is the better running back between the two. You're going to see him be much more efficient and effective behind this line.
Does Jalen Hurts would scare me a bit though?
Yeah, so I'm going to jump into that too because so
I don't think I think Swift was just not that home run of a hitter, and I just think Barkley can do it better than 100%. Swift can.
Yeah,
a little bit more, like I think Barkley has the mold and the thing to do it. I think it's going to be the reverse DeMarco Murray effect.
Yes.
Like going from he went from a good offensive line to Philly, which wasn't so great at the time, and now Barkley's going from one who's wasn't so great to one that's really good. Now, does the loss of Kelsey hurt? Most likely, but they've drafted a guy to kind of take his place, so I don't think it's going to hurt as much. And I just think,
I don't think it's going to hurt that bad, the loss of Kelsey. So I was the reason why I might have been a little bit downer on Barkley going to Philly was that he's going to have no chance to get a touchdown because when they get in close, it always goes to Hurts. So inside the 10, Hurts had 29 rushes. Swift had 27. Swift had just as much as Jalen Hurts did, like 8th most amongst running backs. Huge.
What's the number from inside the 5?
Inside the 5, Hurts had 16, Swift had 14. So it's very even. Wow. It's very even.
That's very surprising.
I would have thought it would have been more.
I was surprised too. And Swift with the 14 attempts inside the 5, 4 touchdowns. Barkley had 6 attempts inside the 5, he had 3. Now, fine. Barkley, want to call him more efficient. All depends on where the line is and all that. Maybe it was that 1 yard gain, whatever it is. Barkley's also a bigger back too. Let's call a spade a spade. I just think that alone, you're going to have a lot of TD regression or aggression. It's going to go closer to the mean right now for Barkley, 100%.
You're the finance guy, I thought.
Yeah, but I don't like to use the word like aggression. It sounds weird. And positive aggression sounds. Anyways, we're going to move on from this. He's going to have more touchdowns. He's going to get closer to the mean. Standard deviations being what they are. Receptions are a push though, because Hurts typically doesn't pass out in the flats all that much. Doesn't do a lot of dump offs. So I think that's going to inhibit Barkley's PPR upside, and also the weapons are better too, right?
For sure, he's going to get less catches.
Swift,
I think Hurts is just a bit inaccurate with those passes too. He's not the most accurate guy on short.
No, but you see, what he does is he tries, like, a lot of QBs will go to the outlet guy, like. Instead of going to the outlet guy, he likes to run and do it himself, right?
Yes.
So there's less chance of him. You know how many times I had Swift last year, and it was annoying because he would be alone in the flat. You could get the yards, you could get the first down, and like he would just take off running. Like he wouldn't pass it to him. So I think it's more like me aspect of Hurts and like wanting to do it himself. And I think that will hurt for sure Barkley's PPR numbers.
And with Barkley, I think they only have one running back on the roster. I think it's just Kendall Gainwell.
Kenneth Gainwell. Yeah.
Scott is not there anymore? Not Bart Scott.
Boston.
I think Boston Scott's still on the Boston.
No, I checked Sport Track. I don't think I think they only have 2 or 3 running backs on the roster. I might be wrong, but
I mean, all the same. Like further to Nacc's point with Josh Jacobs, they didn't sign Barkley to not get the rock. I think we're looking at easily 250 attempts, and I think we can expect somewhere between 40 to 50 receptions. Even Swift had 40 receptions, so I think they're going to use Barkley.
Scott is not on the roster, by the way. Sorry to
Who's that?
Scott is not
So
on the
there you
roster. They have Lee Nichols as their third right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, this raises Barkley's floor and his ceiling. This couldn't be a better opportunity for him. Will I be as bullish as Nacc and say he's going to be top 3? No, just because the offense does like to keep it balanced too, right? I mean, they're not predominantly a running team, so I think that, again, it might hinder him a little bit. But at the same time, I think we're looking at like a 2022 replica of Barkley's numbers. He's going to be knocking on RB5. Yeah.
Yeah, so just last 3 years, 13 games played. 2021, he played 13 games in 2021, 162 attempts, 593 yards. I don't even remember him having that bad of a season. The next year, 2022, 16 games started, 295 totes.
Because he tried to come back he tried to come back too quick in 2021, or tried to come back too quick. I think he got hurt again, and he tried to play through it, and it just inhibited his burst throughout the entire season. 2022, he was fully healthy, and you saw his numbers. You saw him break out. He's never going to get 91 receptions like he did in his rookie season again. But I think between 40 and 50 is very realistic. That's more of his norm. And I think 1,200 yards is very realistic as well, with another 8 touchdowns. Yeah, like I RB1 Barkley, don't have a problem with it whatsoever. I mean, obviously if he stays healthy, but that can happen to any player.
Yeah, I think that's decent. I think it just depends on everyone's risk profile and everyone's draft strategy again, which we'll have some episodes on that for sure. But
I think with Barkley, you're gonna have guys on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You're gonna have guys that are gonna say, I'm gonna go all in on him, whatever, and then they're gonna have guys that say, no, I'm not touching him until like he falls to me in a really nice spot, and that's fine. Just because I feel like the sentiment on him has shifted a little bit, but if he's there for me, I'm not saying no. It's going to be hard to root for him for 2 games of the season, but it is what it is.
So you guys went with the star players again. I get left with the scraps. I did choose Gus Edwards.
You chose Gus Edwards. Get out of here. You wanted Gus Edwards.
Yeah, I wanted Gus Edwards. I think the familiarity with Greg Roman, who was his OC in Baltimore, now becomes his OC with the Chargers again. I think that'll have a big impact. His underlying metrics are really good. 13 TDs last year. 12 of the 13 were inside the 5. So he was the primary goal line back, even with Lamar Jackson. So I think it was 64% of his rushes were inside the 5. So I'm becoming the type of drafter in fantasy where I wanna have the security of the guy who is going to tote the rock inside the 20, inside the 10, inside the 5. There's nothing worse. I'm sure, Anthony, you saw it, Anthony. My God. We actually called you Anthony. Nacc, I'm sure you felt it with Swift, where you have Swift, he does all the work, and then Lamar, Kenneth, Gainwell, whatever. Like it's not Lamar, Jalen Hurts. There's nothing worse. So the 3-point yards prior to contact on average is big as well. So basically, every time he's rushing the ball, he's almost getting to second and short or third and short without even being touched. And they're going to run the same type of gap scheme. It's not a zone scheme. Like Edwards isn't the most talented running back. He's not shifty. He's a meat and potatoes plug-in guy. He finds a hole. He runs into it. He dives first. Plug into a hole?
Meat and potatoes. That's nice.
Bad euphemism?
Actually,
meat and potatoes.
Meat and potatoes. That's nice. I like that.
I had meat and potatoes today, and there's no committee. Like the Ravens have been a big committee team the last few years. Mitchell, I think we're all high on KV on Mitchell. Hopefully he gets back healthy. Justice Hill, again Lamar Jackson. So I think for him it's like a mid RB2. I could see him going in the 8th round, 9th round, but I think he's going to have a higher upside. Again, 200.
RB2.
Yeah, 200. He had 200 carries, 810 rushing yards. Like the yards per carry isn't great, but the volume is going to be there. And we've tweeted out a lot of times, whether it's on Twitter or we mentioned on Instagram, Jim Harbaugh, when he was last coach of the 49ers, they were basically top 5 in rushing attempts and basically top 7 in rushing yards. It's a balanced offense. He runs balanced offense. He doesn't like throwing it as much. They're going to play action a ton. They're not zone blocking. It's going to be power eye. Like they still use a fullback, Patrick Ricard. It's one of the few teams that still uses a fullback and not just to receive the ball. It's to lead block. So
they have no wide receivers now, so I guess there is more chance to.
So that's a good point. That's a good point, Nacc. I don't know if they're going to want to draft a wide receiver in number 5 or an offensive lineman. A lot of people think it's offensive line because of the way Harbaugh likes to run his offense, or they trade down. If they draft, if you play devil's advocate, the only competition for Edmonds could be if they draft a running back, and I'm convinced they're going to draft Blake Corum, who was
Michigan guy, right?
Harbaugh's running back at Michigan. I'm pretty convinced of that, but even then, I think Edwards could provide some really good value.
I agree 100%. I mean, I think you're looking at a solid amount of touchdowns. You're looking at solid yards after yards per carry. Like he ran 198 times last year. That's not nothing.
Yeah.
Like you can probably push for that easy again. I think for RB2 numbers, it's great. My only concern is just, the receiving upside, right?
Yeah.
Totally. And in a PPR league, right? I mean, I think his value holds a lot more on a standard league. In a PPR league, though, I think it's going to be limited slightly. Nacc, you want?
And that's why I think. And that's why. And sorry. And that's why I think mid RB2 or even flex.
Yep.
Like he'll be a good even like backup to fill in during bye weeks. But I think you get good value out of him. Sorry, go ahead now.
No, I was just going to say, like, my prediction, you say they may not draft a wide receiver. My prediction is they trade, New England trades down to 5, they go up to 3, and they snag Marvin Harrison Jr.
Ooh.
New England goes down to 5, they still get May or Daniels because obviously Arizona is not going to draft a QB, so it doesn't hurt them from getting their QB, and they get some more draft stock to, get more pieces on their team because they need a hell of a lot, right? So it's just something I thought about.
Yeah.
Could be something. And then obviously Arizona would probably take Rome or Neighbors.
Yeah.
However you want to say it. Just an interesting little tidbit.
That makes sense. That's not a bad theory. But I mean, I have seen a lot of mocks though for LA drafting Joe Alt and drafting an offensive tackle too, though. Like I think that also holds true as well. Like just think about I think the Harbaugh is going to make a big influence on that decision, obviously, as he should, because he is the coach. I would be very much in on Gus this year. Yeah, I don't know who else would be toting the rock in LA. Like,
just to circle back quickly to the Chargers draft. So the Vikings have 2 first-round picks now, right?
11 and 23.
I think that could be interesting because the offensive line depth is pretty good for this draft. It would be interesting for the Chargers to trade down, get 11 for an offensive lineman, and get one of those like Keon Coleman or like Troy or A.D. Mitchell or Xavier Worthy type wide receivers, because they need to come out of this draft with like a day one, a round 1 or round 2 wide receiver.
100%.
Whitney Johnson was so bad. I like Josh Palmer, but he doesn't stay healthy.
Yep.
So as much as they're going to be a run-heavy offense, they need to inject more juice into, especially losing Mike Williams and Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's also not he's not a WR1, no, Josh Palmer.
Exactly.
He could be number 1 on the depth chart, but he's definitely not a one, right? Like,
exactly.
No, you got to get Herbert some weapons, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move on to the pass catchers. I think a lot of analysts are predicting this is going to be one of the best draft classes at the wide receiver position. Obviously, 2022 had Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, 2014, if you guys may or may not recall, OBJ, Mike Evans, Brendan Cooks, but Devontae Adams was a second rounder. Allen Robinson as well was in the later rounds. So this year there is Maserati, Marvin Harrison, Roma Dunze, who I love, Malik Neighbors. So there's a lot of value in day one, day two, even like Troy Franklin, Jalen Polk, who's Rome's teammate. So there was quite a bit of free agents at the wide receiver position. Fab, who for you made an impact either on free agency or trade at the wide receiver position over the past week or so?
Hollywood Brown, man. Marquise Brown. I am so pumped for him to go to Kansas City. I think this is such a great spot for him. Also a great spot for Mahomes, actually. Like, this is going to help Mahomes a lot. And it's going to really complement Rashee Rice, too. They finally got, like, what seems to be a wide receiver one over there. So Marquise Brown showing up and being that 1B, 2A, because I think the opinion on Marquise Brown hasn't been that great of late, but we're forgetting that, like, for a smaller receiver, he plays on the outside really well. Going over his numbers, like, last year was a bit of a wash. Bad quarterback play. He was injured. It just wasn't, call it a wash here, fine. He plays on the outside about 80% of the time. At least that's how it was in 2023. Rashee Rice is much more 50-50 splits. So this is really going to help Mahomes spread out the ball. Mahomes last year, average depth of target was 6.8, which is his lowest ever. We're talking with Brown. Marquise Brown usually runs, well, his average depth of target was 12.7. So already you're spreading out the field for him too. You don't have to rely as much on Kelsey as you would normally. Marquise Valdes-Scantling is gone. Hardman is gone. Richie James is gone. There's roughly about 140 targets that are being freed up right now with all these changes in their changes on their roster. And I think ultimately Marquise Brown will be the guy that they wanted MVS or Hardman to be, because they never really materialized the way that they wanted to. And let me just take you back for a second to 2022 when DeAndre Hopkins was suspended the first 6 games in Arizona and Marquise Brown was the de facto number one. And there was no other target there, and everything was being fluttered to him. In 6 games, because then he also got injured too, but anyways, in 6 games, he had 61 targets for 43 receptions, 485 yards, and 3 touchdowns. You extrapolate that over the course of an entire season, you're looking at 120 receptions, 1,400 yards, 9 touchdowns. Am I saying that's going to happen to Marquise Brown this year? No. But that was with Kyler Murray throwing in the ball.
They were saying Kyler Murray bad
compared to Mahomes.
You're saying that you said it in a way that and Kyler Murray was throwing
not
the
the
ball.
best pocket passer in the NFL compared to Mahomes.
No, 100%.
That's all.
I'm not down on Marquise, 100%. I'm in favor of whatever Fab just said. Like, I agree with almost everything he just said, because, dude, he comes in there. He doesn't have to be the guy. Yeah. You have another guy that's there. You also, guys, Kelsey's not just going to disappear completely, but he has a burner. Like, he's got a burner on the outside that can catch the ball. Like, this guy is not – okay, look – he started in Baltimore, who didn't really throw the ball that much. You know what I mean? Like, they always like to run. He did go to Arizona, where, like, it's been QB play has been on and off. Murray's been hurt. Injuries have screwed him too. Yeah, exactly. So, like, I agree that it's an unbelievable fit. Great signing by them. Is he going to be Joe Fantasy and, like, I don't know. I think even 80 catches could be a stretch for Brown. First of all, he does have to stay on the field.
Yeah, for sure. But this is also a 1-year prove-it deal, right? He's also on a 1-year prove-it deal as well. So I think he's, as much as he can, obviously, going to try and ball out. And I think he's in a good spot. I would not be surprised if he puts together his best fantasy season to date, which his best one has been 1,000 yards, 75 catches. Like, it's not blowing the roof off the doors, whatever you want to call it there. But I do think he's going to have wide receiver 3. I have no issues with this whatsoever. I think even good days he's going to put up low-end wide receiver 2, mid-tier wide receiver 2. I think on a week-to-week basis, points per game basis over the course of the year, I think he's wide receiver 3, and you're getting a nice piece of the offense because even Sky Moore hasn't exactly been lighting it up either. Like, and they drafted him to be,
first rounder, right?
Second rounder,
in the
I
first
believe.
round?
Was it
second?
or maybe it was end of first? That's what I'm thinking is a second.
Yeah,
But
he was
yeah,
in the
like
first.
it's been inconsistent. And also last year, Mahomes, ask Nick, worst season to date. Right, 27 touchdowns, his lowest yards per attempt, the lowest yards per game. Really didn't have a good season by his standards, by Mahomes metrics.
Yeah.
So I think you can expect to bounce back, and I think having that extra weapon like Marquise Brown to really stretch the field is going to help a lot. I'm high. Yep.
We
I think
assume Marquise Brown is a deep threat, but yards per reception, rookie year 12.7, second year 13.3, 11.1, 10.6, 11.3. So he has this perception. I think when he came into the league, there was a lot of deep passes, and he struggled with drops. But and this is not a knock on him necessarily, but he's not necessarily just a deep guy. Like he runs a good route tree. He could run a decent amount of routes inside. I was quite impressed with his when Kyler was available, as you were saying, Fab. Like, he looked good with Kyler, not just as a deep threat, but I think with Mahomes, they can unlock another layer that was missing when Tyreek Hill left. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if it was Nacc or you who said that this might actually reduce Travis Kelce's stock just a little bit, which I don't think is a big deal because he's getting older. They're kind of treating him, like how the NBA, like how the Spurs do, where they don't really pay too much attention to the regular season, and it's the playoff time. That's when they really go. And I can see Travis Kelce's reps reducing because Rashee Rice is going to start being the underneath guy. So this, to me, like, I've seen it on Twitter. This does not affect Rashee Rice at all. I think his stock is still quite high.
I agree 100% on that. And when I was looking at the splits on who plays out wide and who plays in the slot, Rashee is very 50-50. Marquise Brown lately has been working more on the outside, but he can play he can play anywhere, like you said too, because he's had that body of work, and I really think it's going to be for replacement of MVS. Yep.
I think he's going to get overdrafted though. He's going to get drafted high, and someone's going to overpay for him.
I agree with you.
Everyone's going to go
name. He's still named.
Name and like whole thing with Mahomes now and but like, dude, there's other mouths to feed over there as well, right? So I think he's going to be that for sure. Beautiful, nice wide receiver 3. Some weeks he's going to be fringe wide receiver 2 for sure. Like, he's going to have his weeks. I think he's just going to be drafted too high.
And Mahomes has changed. Maybe I'll just make this the last point. Mahomes has changed his game quite a bit, where he's not big game hunting as he used to. He's taking what the defense gives him. I actually think losing Tyreek has been a benefit to him because he's not trying to push it deep all the time. And he's able to work underneath with Kelce and work underneath with Rashee Rice and dump it off. So I see that as he's not going to always throw deep to him. Nacc, who do you have?
Okay, well, I went in another direction. I went on a big name guy who got paid, who I don't think is a good fit to where he went. First of all, look, I know it's a different GM, but the Titans as an organization passed on paying a 26-year-old AJ Brown a very similar contract, and now they turn around and they give a 29-year-old the same deal. With just a touch less in guarantees. I think it was 95, 4 years, 95 and 50 million guaranteed. So of course I'm talking about Calvin Ridley. Look, if I look for a positive first, I think it's going to help a young Levis. He's going to have another target to throw at. So, Hopkins on one side, really on the other side. On paper, it looks great. I think Hopkins is QB proof, like as we've seen throughout our career. But on the other hand, I don't think Ridley is that guy. Look, with Lawrence this year, 76 catches, 1,000 yards, ATDs, 13.4 yards per catch on 136 targets. That's a 55% catch rate. That's not great. Was Lawrence banged up a bit towards the end of the year? Sure. But when you look at his true catch rate, that number jumps to 86%, which ranked 72nd in the league last year. His contested catch rate was also low at 33%, which was 66th in the league. So that means he's not separating all that much and not being open. And for a young quarterback, that's not what you want. I don't think he's definitely not going to outperform the contract. I don't even know if he's going to perform to the contract. He's also arguably downgrading at QB, going from Lawrence to Levis, who's not proven. We had that one game last year where he threw for 4 touchdowns in his first game, and everyone, including myself, blew their fab money on him, and then didn't do anything the rest of the way, right? So he's still raw. We don't know what he has in him. He also played much of the year last year with their number one, Christian Kirk, who was injured. And still had, kind of mediocre numbers, like 1,000 yards for, on 76 catches. Like, I feel like he should be doing a lot better. I think he should have been better. I don't think he was that great. And I don't know, like he could be in the wide receiver 2 discussion this year, but I think he's going to be more of a wide receiver 3. I just don't think he's going to be that guy you can trust week in and week out. And look, the numbers, they show it, right? Like he's catching 30% less of the balls that he should be catching, right? Like, or there were catchable balls. So, and look, he's not separating. So I just think, not the greatest of fits going to Tennessee. I guess time will tell, but I didn't like the move by the Titans.
So I think there's a few things with regards to this move. The Titans, I think, had the second most cap space in the league. And I'm of the belief that if you're going to see if your rookie QB or second-year QB can be the guy, just add as much talent as you can. Because that's what the Bears didn't do. And then they were stuck in year 3, okay, now we have to add talent. Now we have to see if Fields is the guy, right? So, as much talent as possible. I like that fact. Ridley, it seemed like they didn't use him in the slot as much. They tried to put him out wide. And it seemed like when he was playing in the slot a bit more, where he doesn't have man-on-man coverage, you don't have a DB that's right on his face, he's able to separate a bit more. But I think I agree to your point, to your point, Nacc. Look, I had him last year in another league, and there was a lot of inconsistency. I think that Jaguars offense, I know we somewhat like Lawrence. To your point, Levis is a bit of a downgrade. I think what helps is to have a true number one. Having DeAndre Hopkins I can't even talk today. Having DeAndre Hopkins next to him, I think it should free him up a bit more. And then they also have Tony Pollard. They also have Tajee Spears. There's a lot of ammunition. There's a lot of speed on that team. I think it just depends how they will use him. Will they use him in the slot? Will they use him out wide? And how does Will Levis develop?
I'm not drafting him at all. I'm not touching this guy with a 10-foot pole. In general, anyone on Houston, anyone on Titans, I'm not touching. I don't know. There's nothing that is incentivized. He's my wide receiver 4, and he's a low end wide receiver 4 for me.
Wow,
yeah.
Wide receiver 4.
Yeah.
I want to know who are you choosing above him?
DeAndre Hopkins for sure.
Okay, obviously.
Yeah.
but I mean,
you want me to go through the top 40 receivers above him?
You're telling me there's 40 or there's 30
that I feel
plus
more
people
comfortable with. Yes, that I feel more comfortable with. Yeah.
30?
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to go
half of the Green Bay Packers wide receivers I would take before him after everything.
You're taking Wicks over him?
Who?
Wicks.
No, okay, fine. But what I mean to say is that he's not something that I'm running after, and even if he's there, I would be hard pressed to draft him just because of the unknown. The suspension in 2022 obviously doesn't help, and even before that, he had one really good season. And being 29 years old, I know he's a young 29-year-old player. I get that. I just feel like he might not never get back to what he could have been, and he's going from not arguably a worse quarterback. He is going to a worse quarterback, and he's not even the guy there either.
Okay, so Fab, let me rattle off a few names.
Yep.
Christian Kirk or Calvin Ridley.
Oh my God, yeah. Christian Kirk over.
Yeah.
Okay. Terry McLaurin.
Yes.
Deontay Johnson.
With no quarterback?
Yes. Deontay Johnson, yes.
I'm not touching McLaurin anymore because you guys know my history with him. I can't. Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Jackson Smith and Jigba after, yeah.
Jordan Addison.
No. Jordan Addison. No, just actually, know something. Hold on a second. I would probably take him over like Quentin Johnson. There it is. That's my
come on.
I can't wait to play.
He's horrible
this year.
Like, I don't know, man. I'm not.
Okay,
I'm
last
super high on him.
Last one. Cortland Sutton.
No, okay, I'll take Ridley over Sutton.
Okay.
Even though Sutton actually has having it's a quarterback play right now. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Because he was he's a great talent, but he went from like Joey Lawrence or whatever, Trevor Lawrence, to the guy who puts mayonnaise on his bananas. Like, I'm just
Billy Jeans
in his coffee,
whatever. Like. The talent is there for sure.
He's in his bananas.
Whatever. Doesn't he eat banana without a peel? He eats the banana with the peel.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the peel.
Excuse me, with the peel. Yeah, we do it normally. He does it abnormal. Yes.
A lot of douche vibes with Will Levis.
I'm not commenting on the character, just his QB play, and quite frankly, it leaves a lot to be desired. And I don't know if he's able to sustain a lot of volume for Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. Quite frankly.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say Hopkins is QB proof. Like it doesn't matter.
100%.
Like, even if he's getting older, like his game ages so well.
And last year proved it. Because I was down on him last year, and I was like, I don't know what happened, but he doesn't matter. If you put Ridley in any other environment, wide receiver 3, no problem. No problem. Even wide receiver 2, no problem. We have that conversation. Because he's in that environment right now, I think that is the bigger propensity for me to be a little bit downer on him.
I don't think he's ever a wide receiver 2. Where is he a wide receiver 2? On which team right now?
Giants.
Is he a wide receiver 2? The Giants?
I'm saying he's getting targets at least for sure. He's getting opportunity 100%.
He got 136 targets last year.
Yeah.
He only caught 76 of those for 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
You're telling me he's going to do better with the Giants?
No. I think, that's a good point. The catch rate was really inefficient last year, and it's
55%.
Yeah, I get it. With a worse QB, I think the talent is still there. Like I think he's still very talented. I just think it's very fair to say pre-draft it's hard to trust him. Very hard to trust him. I'll go last with Curtis Samuel. I love this move with Buffalo. So dynamic, speedy receiver. Another trend. So I think with regards to the players that I've chosen, I've taken guys who are reunited with their offensive coordinators in previous places. So Brissett with Alex Van Pelt, Gus Edwards and Greg Roman. Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator for the Bills midway through the season when they fired Ken Dorsey. So Curtis Samuel is being reunited with Joe Brady. 2020 with the Panthers, he had 77 catches, 850 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he had some of those games where like he was rushing the ball to 41 carries, 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 27 that year. So he's clear, like high end WR3. Obviously with Josh Allen, it'll be interesting to see where he plays. Does he play more on the outside? 70% of the time last season, he was in the slot. And we know that Stephon Diggs, as he's getting older, he should probably be closer to the slot, although he could still play out wide. But again, first legit QB that he's had. So for me, this is like very, very good value, really solid player. I personally think he was the most consistent wide receiver for the Commanders last year, and I had McLaurin. I was following Dotson as a McLaurin owner, and I felt that Samuel, even if I didn't know him, you just see his name pop up because he was constantly consistent. So, and he separates 13 average yards of separation per route at 3.3 yards. That was 13th in the league. So I think this is an easy one, low value, reunited with his offensive coordinator, and we know how good Josh Allen is. So.
Yeah, I think you nailed everything there. I know they have Shakur. That's going to be, I think, a big part of the offense this year. So I'm excited to see where that goes. I'm not convinced as we sit right now that Diggs starts the year with Buffalo. I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think he could be maybe shipped out, maybe traded, maybe, I don't know. I'm not 100%. So that would change the dynamic a lot. But let's just play devil's advocate and say that he is going to be there. I think they have a nice wide receiver group. And I think Curtis Samuel could also be somewhat of a Swiss Army knife as well, right? He had a lot of rushing yards last year as well. So he does that he brings that element that Buffalo didn't really have, I guess. A wide receiver that's rushing all that much and that could be efficient as a rusher, kind of like a Deebo Samuel style, poor man's Deebo Samuel, I would say.
Skinnier version, but I agree.
You know what I mean? So I think it brings another dynamic to their game. Like I said, I think I'm a high on Shakur as well in that offense. Like he took off last year, and I think it's just going to get bigger. So I want to see how that works with the addition of Samuel. But look, losing Gabe Davis was big because he was your deep threat guy. So I think replacing him with a Samuel was a great move, and he could do a little bit more than Gabe Davis could. So I think, to your point, very solid pickup for Buffalo.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how he's involved in the offense, to your point, Nacc, with the whole Khalil Shakur thing. But I think it's a great addition. I think it just complements a lot of weapons for Josh Allen, and he's steady Eddie. Like if you look at his numbers, like throughout his whole career, like he's consistent. You know what you're getting out of him. There's no surprises. He does rush the ball well too. I think it's going to be a nice value play. If you're looking to draft him as a wide receiver, again, like more on the wide receiver 4 side, I think he's more of a depth guy, but I think it's going to be very helpful. I think you can argue between him and Calvin Ridley. I'm kidding. I was waiting for a reaction on that. I was waiting for a reaction on that.
We're closing it on. We're closing on 10 p.m. An hour and a half. So there's some sleep.
We're a little bit tired.
You know what I mean? Like does he have a steady floor? That's my only problem with Samuel, is that he's a lot like he'll have that game where it's like 2 catches, 12 yards, Like you'll have that disappointing game. Hard to trust in a fantasy aspect 100%. All the time.
We've seen guys start Gabe Davis within our leagues. Like Gabe Davis was really solid. I felt last year was
because he has those big games, man. Gabe Davis has those big games where it's and like if you need a Hail Mary and you're short, then you have like a snowball's chance in hell. You're starting Gabe Davis, and because
he's a deep threat. But Samuel has a more refined route tree where he's not just a deep threat guy, which leads me to think that I think he can have a bigger impact. Nacc, you were talking about Diggs getting traded. It just made me giddy thinking of them trading him. They have 11 picks this draft. Trading him, trying to move up to get one of the top wide receivers. Oh my God, that would be amazing! Like if they think maybe they can move up and get a Rome or
I'd be so upset.
To number 5.
He's being very diva-ish, his cryptic tweets and his whole thing. Like I think I feel like they're starting to get tired of it too, right? Like these older receivers, towards the end of their back end of their career, they start with the antics, bring up AB and stuff like that. Like you just start thinking like you're better than everyone and you're just like, you're entitled to whatever. But I think he's got to just stop with the cryptic stuff. Like by his standards too, he didn't have the greatest year either, right?
No,
he did not have a Stephon Diggs type year. Totally. And people who drafted him high last year were very disappointed with his production. Yes.
Hello.
Yep.
He killed me in second half.
Yeah.
He killed, like in our finals matchup, man. He just
to pay that much for that kind of production. Maybe Buffalo's over it. Maybe that's why he sends out stuff like that, because maybe Buffalo told him or asked him to take a pay cut. Like, we don't know what goes on back door. Like, again, I don't know where there's smoke, there's fire, but right now, I'm not convinced he starts week 1 with the Bills. And to your point, Raj, I think that's very great that, they do have a lot of picks. Maybe they just bundle him up somewhere, try to get like a 4th for him or something, a 4th and a 6th, something like that.
I think listen, the guy's also aging, and not gracefully, unfortunately, especially with all the comments that he's been rolling around and all that. He has a big cap hit. I mean, I don't think it's really helping Buffalo's cap situation either. A trade would make sense for sure.
That's what especially with
quickly searching.
They have like $4 million in cap space or something. Like, I don't even.
Apparently, Cowboys are suitors, which I find weird. Like, I don't know where they're going to fit him on the roster, but they have no cap space. That's why I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. But I mean, you're talking about you're talking about having that wide receiver on your roster that's just adding to a lot of negativity. And I think it would make a lot of sense for them to start looking to move forward, because they seem like a bit of a no-nonsense type of organization, especially right now with Josh Allen there. They know exactly where their value is. I think it's going to be not before long that they're going to move on from
mode, right? So
from Stephon Diggs, 2 points. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. It's a bit of a hot take, but the more I think about it, the more it makes more sense, because everyone's fed up with this bullshit to a degree.
2 years ago, where he really lit it up. He's got to find that back. But I think, I just got to stop with the antics and just go out and play, man. Like, stop with the cryptic tweets. Stop with me, making it all about yourself, and just like go out there and ball, like you can, or else they just got to make a decision on this guy and decide, like, listen, are we moving forward with you, or we taking the other taking the road and just getting rid of you.
Dude, it would be such a coup for them to go grab one of the top 3, though. Like, give one of those massive targets to Josh Allen. Oh man, it would be spectacular.
Yeah, and we've seen Stephon Diggs in the second half of the year again kind of struggle to, whether from a fantasy perspective or even real life football perspective, struggle to upkeep the production that he had in the beginning of the year. And he wasn't really good during the playoffs, right? Obviously the second half of the season as well. So, is it age? Is it the fact that they don't move him around enough in the slot? And I think it could be really interesting. Again, these are rumors on our end, but it would really be interesting to see if they try to trade up for a wide receiver.
And that comment about his splits is really well taken, right? I mean, he does disappear in the colder months of the year.
Just a brutal second half.
Yeah. And when you're playing in Buffalo, like, that's probably the last type of characteristic that you want to have associated to yourself. So
just breaking news, just to maybe end this session here, our first pod. But breaking news from Jerry Dulac, who was mentioned prior here, that the Pittsburgh Steelers reportedly plan to pursue a big name wide receiver, and some of the names to look out for include Mike Williams, Stephon Diggs, who we just mentioned, Brandon Ayuk, and Justin Jefferson.
Brandon Ayuk would be beautiful. Justin Jefferson, wow.
Why do they want to trade Ayuk?
I don't know. Like, why are you? I guess they don't want to pay him. Like, they don't want to pay this guy, which is like,
he's a better receiver than Debo.
He is better than Debo. Thank you. He is better than Debo.
Yeah. But definitely more of a pure receiver. Yeah. I don't know. So
Jerry Dulac is messaging you directly these days?
Yes. We're on a text basis now. I told him I messaged a bunch of people about the pod and trying to get some contacts. And being a Steelers fan, he helped me out a little bit.
So we're nearing the end of the first episode, guys, and I think it went pretty well, despite the fact that I got kicked out for about 6 minutes. I really hope this all gets uploaded, because I don't think I could do another hour and 30 minutes and have it be this good?
No, that one got uploaded.
Guys, if we don't have the first one, I quit.
I think it went well, but the 90-minute body of work in the beginning, we ain't doing that twice, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, we're not going to do as long of an intro. We just kind of wanted to let people know who we are.
Yeah, look, this was the first one. We got a little excited. We wanted to get some content out there. So definitely feel like these will be a little bit shorter in the next few. But I think we got our feet wet here. And look, hope you guys like it. Follow us on the socials. You can follow us on Instagram at the Bush League Huddle. Also on TikTok, same handle. So follow us there. We have a YouTube. We're also on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, Bush League Huddle, but without the E.
Thanks for the character limit, Elon.
Yeah, and we'll be on Spotify. We'll be on Apple. So just like, comment, let us know if you want, what kind of content you guys prefer, what you guys want to hear more of, and we'll definitely take it into consideration.
Thanks, everyone. Please feel free to share any feedback on our first episode. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.